now we're going to focus on the stroke. And we've already talked about it a little bit in our stance. We actually built our entire stance around giving ourselves freedom for our stroke away from our body. So since we did that, now we have the body over here and we're free to stroke the cue. That's why we brought in the other sports, talking about throwing motions in football and baseball, golf, tennis. So here's our pull stroke. It's away from our body. And now what are we looking for in a stroke? Basically, we want it to be straight and smooth. And we want it to be consistent also. And we touched upon that a little bit in our alignment as far as our joints, our shoulder, our elbow. Now if you do line it up like this with your elbow and shoulder on the stroking line on the vertical plane, then it's automatically going to go straight. At least it's going to contribute greatly towards having a straight stroke. So one thing I want to mention is that the stroke is a complete motion from the backswing to the follow through, to the end of the follow through. So we could call a stroke an accelerated throwing motion, or an accelerating throwing motion with a backswing and a follow through. Okay, so it's not just one even speed coming through. You're actually going to start at your backswing and then accelerate to the front. So you want to think acceleration, same thing as in throwing a baseball. You want to accelerate. And there's a couple different kinds of strokes, as I like to call them. This one would be called the basic stroke. Okay, so I don't want to move my elbow at all. See that? I'm just swinging my forearm. My hand is coming through and my elbow stays up where it is. I call that the basic stroke. Okay, beyond that, we have a follow-through stroke, or drop the elbow stroke. And same thing, you'll start out coming through with your hand, but then your elbow is going to drop and allow the cue to go longer than it can with the basic stroke. So I'll get back here. See that? And if I keep pushing my elbow, watch, the cue just keeps on going like that. So you could actually follow through all the way to the joint of the cue or beyond. Okay, one thing to keep in mind when you're doing that is not to drop your hand as well as your elbow. You want to control the cue with your hand, and if you do that, your elbow is naturally going to drop. And pretty much all the top players in the world do this. They're going to drop their elbow at least 1 or 2 inches. Usually playing straight pull, you'll find it where a player won't really drop their elbow, and that was more of the straight pull style back 50, 75 years ago. Was holding the cue up a lot further in here and just having a real simple basic stroke like that. You can see how the cue right now is arcing like this, but it's still going to be straight. Okay, with a follow through where you're dropping your elbow, see how it comes along. And I'll get on this line and put a black line on this piece of tape. Okay, so you want to be smooth and follow through, and there's a lot of drills to help you with that I'm going to show you. Okay, so following through on a straight line is very important in your stroke, and that's what we're going to develop. In order to do that, you need to be starting on that same line that you want to stroke down, ideally. And in order to do that, you're going to have a backswing that comes back straight on the line that you want to go down forward in your stroke. So we talked about in our stance really quick. When the tip of your cue is at the cue ball, basically your right arm is going to be straight up and down. Your backswing, say, comes back to here, and then you're going to follow through you're not going to stop here. You're going to go through the ball, usually at least 4 inches and maybe a lot longer. One of the big problems that people are doing is they're stopping at the cue ball or right past the cue ball. So you need to train yourself to go through it like that. And you want to pull back. See, right here you want to come back at this point in your backswing. You want to be on the same line that you're going to come down. So say here's your stroking line. Say the cue ball's on there, right? Just pretend the cue ball's there. Now, you want to be on that line with your backhand. Imagine this line extends all the way back to infinity that way. And it goes to infinity that way. So when your hand is back here, you want the center of the cue back here to be on that line. And that's going to give you the best possible chance to go forward on that line. One of the problems that I see, or challenges, is without even realizing it, some players are pulling their cue off of this line, usually back towards their body. And then they're coming through in their follow through like this, offline, and maybe even swinging around and ending up on the other side. There's a multitude of problems or different ways that they're going to follow through. But that can cause all kinds of problems, like hitting the cue ball off center or just not where you wanted to hit it. And then it can cause problems in your shot making as well. So that's one of the first things to do, is to actually focus on your backswing and bringing your backswing straight back. And a lot of times that's really hard to tell. So what you want to do is get a mirror. Say, put it on the wall. If you don't have a mirror or even a pool table at your house, you can set up a table and put a mirror in front of that. Just pretend you're shooting straight into the mirror. Look exactly into the mirror so the cue that's in the mirror is straight and lined up with your cue. And now you can check your alignment. So it's great for actually developing your stance and your alignment. And now you can actually take some practice strokes as well. And watch what happens when you pull back in the mirror. Does your cue go off to the side? So you want to develop going straight back and straight forward. And one thing you can do is pull back and stop. Pull back real slow. Just focus on your backswing. Pull back slow and then stop and ask yourself, does it look like it's going in? Because I think a lot of people, when they're playing, while they're developing their stroke, they might have anxiety in their backswing. It might cause them to rush their backswing, and if they're not confident that they pull back straight, it's hard for them to have a straight follow through. It might even cause them to wobble around up here. Okay, so it's important to know how to pull back straight. And one thing that's key for doing that is where your eyes are. You need a target in order to pull back away from. So say we have our shot, our object ball is way up here. Here's our stroking line for the cue ball. And it's intersecting the object ball. We're going to get more into this in the aim section, but aim and stroke are so hand in hand that I'll just be talking about the same concepts a lot. In a way, stroke is more important than your aim because there's a million different ways to aim. It's all about geometry. You can use any system you want. We're going to talk about several. But you have to have an accurate or a consistent straight stroke. You need to have the confidence that you can actually hit what you're aiming at. And that's where the sporting aspect of pool comes in. Any scientist can come on and aim the shot for you, but can they hit the ball? So that's what we need to be. We need to be scientists who can actually hit the ball as well. And that's where our stroke comes in. Okay, so here we have our shot. The 13 ball is lined up to go into the pocket at the moment of impact. And I'm going to call that a ghost ball. That's where the cue ball is going to be at the moment of contact. Now these balls are actually contacting here, which is slightly to to this side of our stroking line. Okay, so in order for me to pull back straight, I need to be looking up here, because my target, this is my stroking line, and I have to actually have my eyes on the stroking line in order to pull back on the stroking line. Otherwise I won't know where the stroking line is. It sounds simplistic, but that's why when you're pulling back you want to have your eyes way up here. And we're going to talk about, there's different ways to look at this. You can be looking at the contact point, but keep your cue on that line. So I'm looking way up there now, and now I'm pulling back while I'm looking at the stroking line. And that's going to enable me to have my hand on the stroking line at the end of my backswing. You can pause there if you want to, but you don't have to. So pull back and stop. Just try doing that, pulling back without even any intention of shooting it. Just pulling back straight and stopping. You can do that over and over without hitting it. Pull back straight and stop. Alright, give that a shot. Straight backswing. Alright, so as you're developing your stroke, and as you have developed a straight stroke, you're going to have to learn how to trust your stroke and trust your stroking line that you found. So say for instance your pocket is right here, and what you're doing is you're cutting this 13 ball over there to the pocket. So this is my cue ball at the moment of impact, and you can see when I take it away, we'll put it back here now, the cue ball has to be on that stroking line. It's not even, stroking line is not even touching that contact point for this thin cut shot. But we're going to stroke on that line anyway. So, and remember that line goes to infinity. So as you develop a stroke that goes straight, you've just got to learn how to trust it and not steer. That's one of the biggest things that I see people do is steering. I mean, we've all done it. So we're going to develop a straight stroke, and then we're going to trust it and bring it into our practice shots and into our games. So we're going to, here, we might as well hit this. Let's see what happens. I'm just going to roll it down the stroking line. I didn't even think about the object ball. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the basic stroke and the drop elbow stroke. Here's the basic one. Just watch my elbow. See how the Q-tip goes right into the table? That's good. That's what we want right here. Your hand, because your elbow doesn't drop, your hand is naturally going to come up, and the tip is naturally going to go down, as long as you're not squeezing too hard. So here it is. Right, very simple, very repeatable. Really great for the short game, for short draw shots, anything that you're doing where it doesn't require a lot of cue ball movement and where you want some nice touch. Okay, now what does it look like when you drop your elbow as far as actually hitting a ball? Now you get more follow through, longer follow through, and the tip is going to come in a straighter path through the cue ball. So, see the difference right there? Here it is without dropping the elbow, and then with dropping it, it goes there. So no elbow drop, and then dropping the elbow. It adds so much onto the stroke, so much length. And I think you can actually get more action out of the cue ball when you drop your elbow with less effort. And you can be a little more relaxed. It's just a lot smoother. So here it is again. See that? Keep in mind I didn't drop my hand like this. I didn't push my hand down. If you do that, if you see the tip come up, that's a telltale sign that you dropped your hand too quick. So as you're dropping your elbow, remember to control your hand. Keep pushing your hand forward. Alright, so I haven't really covered grip in its own section, and I'm including it here in the stroke section because it is such an important part of your stroke. It's really attached, and it's going to have a lot of influence on how smooth you are. One thing to keep in mind is you don't want to squeeze it too tight. I see a lot of people doing that. It just makes for a choppy stroke, and it's a little too much of an attempt to control, where we do want a controlled straight stroke, but we don't want to cause it to be less straight or less smooth because of our efforts to control it. The other thing is we don't want to hold it too loose, like this, because now we're losing feel. You're going to get a lot of feel from your fingers being on the cue, but you just don't want to squeeze it too tight. And there's a couple different ways to hold the cue as you follow through. So one way would be to keep your fingers attached and your hand pretty much at the same angle on the cue, so you have the same grip. And what that does, see this bend right here from my hand to my forearm? This part's going to face up. So we're basically keeping the hand the same on the cue. And that's how it looks right there. Another way to do it is keep your hand aligned with your arm. So see my middle finger coming down here? Instead of letting it bend like that, I'm going to keep my hand like this. So from over here, that's going to look like that. Okay, I'm not really squeezing it too tight, but there is room for the cue to roll in my fingers. If I was going to squeeze it the other way, here's how it would look. Okay, these two fingers are important for the grip right here. I like the grip where you're mainly using these fingers. These ones are a little bit looser, but they're still on the cue. That's basically my preference. You could also use the front three fingers where they're all pretty much equal. And I see a lot of players using just their thumb and their index finger, and these ones are looser. Whatever you have control with and good feel with. So just work with that and let your grip help your stroke and be a part of it instead of hindering your stroke. But it is part of it, and you'll work with it and get to have tremendous control with it. Okay, here's a view of the grip hand from back there. See how it's kind of up in these front fingers, and the pinky isn't hanging down there, but it's kind of loose. And the cue actually rolls in the fingers. Or the fingers roll along. So I'm not squeezing it so tight like that. You could have some play in your wrist also. It could be nice and relaxed. Just let it cradle the cue with your fingers and let your thumb hang down to the side right here.